Sorry, folks. We're cutting that music a little short. We've had a little bit of a technical glitch here today, and Linda is streaming from her iPhone, her new iPhone, and so we're trying that as opposed to her laptop today. So, Linda, we thanks for coming on, and we got through the hurdles, and hopefully those who are waiting are we're still waiting, and if not, that's fine. You can watch. They can watch the recording. So our topic today, let me just pull up my thing, is we're going to be talking about ceremony. Can you explain ceremony and medicine and how the two kind of work together?
Yeah, it's more of a heavy topic today, I'd like to say, because um, we need other forms of medicine besides what we're typically using. For instance, definitely we know about a lot of pharmaceuticals and drugs and surgery and different things like that. But there are also, of course, exercise and different things you can do with your body, physiotherapy, hydrotherapy, acupuncture. It's been an interesting day today. Not sure if we were meant to do this today, is my overall feeling. Um, but we're steaming ahead because I think it's an important topic and it's applicable to my own life at the moment. And when we shift or make any shifts in our lives, we can tend to feel uncomfortable or at definitely not at ease, even if it's something exciting and good that's happening in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So ceremony as a medicine for that dis-ease that we feel at times of change in our lives, whatever that might be, uh, is often best addressed by acknowledging that it's a change. And whether it's unpleasant or pleasant, we can mitigate that by helping the group, if it's a group, or the individual move through that state of change by um, saying this is a point in change in our lives. So
Right.
let's think about what that could look like. It could be a wedding, it could be a divorce, it could be a new school, it could be adolescence. So there's different cultures that will introduce a coming of age, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be grandiose and very public. Sometimes these things we have to use some discretion and decide, is this just a private thing? Maybe it's just something between a mother and a daughter. Um, but our culture tends to quickly address or avoid things that are uncomfortable, and we barely get an acknowledgement. So that's why ceremony or addressing the reality of now, the change, is very important as a form of medicine to help the person gain a new place of perspective, because that's actually what's going to happen.
Okay.
Do you understand what I mean? Or do you have about?
Yeah, I get that. I guess the question I have would be, what is the breakdown of ceremony? Because ceremony can be, like you said, a lot of different things, coming of age or whatever, right? So is ceremony? How does it become a medicine, though? I'm not sure. I see the connection between the two.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because as you light a candle to acknowledge someone's passing, that is the medicine. You're
Oh,
acknowledging this person is no longer in your life, and you're giving them credence to the transformation they are making from living to onto the spiritual side.
and
So
and that
it's a
helps you as an individual.
yes,
Oh, I see.
because now you have to have a change in reference point. You can't think, well, I'm going to call this person up now when they're not there any longer.
Right.
Or, for instance, you have to adjust to calling somebody Mrs. So and so. They may not be a Miss So and so any longer if they've changed their name.
Hmm.
And that's a medicine for you because um, it's helping you identify that there's a shift in your relativity to that person.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So a common thing that I will hear in the office is I've never been able to accept my best friend's marriage because I wasn't present for the wedding. I was away somewhere. And so even 10 years after the couple's been married, they still have a difficulty in associating their marriage,
Because
believe.
they weren't there for the ceremony. Got
Yes.
it. That makes sense. Oh, isn't that interesting?
Yes. And, uh, along with a lot of joy, there can be a lot of pain and grief. So, for instance, my dear pet, Jack, who's been with our family for 14 years, passed away last weekend, and
Oh,
a very, very difficult time for everyone because he was so loved and just so part of the household of um, where's Jack? Has he got his meal yet? Is he back in the house from his little visit outside? All of those day to day things that we take for granted are no longer there.
yeah.
So, moving the process along is by acknowledging, instead of maybe just shuffling them off to the vet to be, as I'm going to use as a harsh term, processed. Um, we can become very disconnected if the veterinarian clinic does not hold a place of reverence and peace and understanding for the family as they say goodbye to their dear pet. And there's different levels of doing that depending on everyone's point of reference
Right.
uh, in their spiritual lives. So, and it's been lovely getting cards, it's been lovely getting flowers, because everybody knew that we really appreciated having this fellow around in our lives. And that's a point of ceremony in medicine that I like to bring to people's attention. And today I'm wearing my cape that I had purchased in Peru from some of the shaman down there as they taught us different procedures to acknowledge a spiritual change or a shift in environment, a shift in health. You can be grateful as just a simple ceremony or medicine, like, oh wow, I'm glad I'm over that flu, for
Mm-hmm.
instance. Just even stating that
Right.
um, helps shift our energetic being into a place of moving forward again, as opposed to continue dwelling in the past.
Would something like meditation be something close to that change where you're in one state or see some kind of reference and in maybe a deep meditation you see things differently and that invokes a change? Would that be similar to what you're talking about? Can it happen within a meditation?
I think a meditation process is for calming and quieting the brain.
Okay.
So perhaps an active meditation whereby you're going through the process of recalling, um, for instance, like you know, if you're leaving a particular house to move to a new neighborhood, for instance, you can give credence to the old and a welcoming to the new.
Mm.
Are you in a meditative state to do that? I suppose you could in your own private way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Usually that's a shared event if there's more than one person moving, but hence the process of a housewarming party or the welcome wagon used to be a very popular thing in
Mm-hmm.
Calgary um, back in a day. So, uh, as far as the meditation goes, I would see it. No, it's
Okay.
ceremony is more active and more of a physical form that
Okay.
addresses the unseen or the energetic event of change, if that
Got it.
makes.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. So there's, and whether it's flowers, food, um, articles of clothing. I mean, many things inhabit what our ceremony is, and it's become very vogue to move into calling it ritual. Um, and people could say, well, we have a ritual with our family where every Mother's Day we go to the buffet somewhere. Not that we're having buffets anymore, but um, I think there's, different events that people will say this is a
Mm-hmm.
ritual thing for us to acknowledge um, somebody in the family, or even a change in time of year. So you can do that with fasts. You can do it just like Lent, going through the Catholic season right now is Lent, upcoming and approaching Easter, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an important part of addressing the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual we've talked about before that gives us 100% health. So this is
So,
the
sorry.
act. It's okay.
So I was just wondering, are traditions a form of ceremony then? Like Christmas, Easter? I mean, you brought that up. Would those be because they do invoke a thought, at least, to a specific event or thing or something? So would they be part of that ceremony structure you're describing?
Yes, it's part of this ceremony. It's a tradition. It's an acknowledgement of a certain time of year and what it represents.
Right.
Ceremony within that can be then taken to a more precise, like opening gifts on a particular evening, eating a particular meal on
Right.
the evening. That's the ceremony of that tradition.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's lovely to be able to um, give credence. It's another way of gratefulness. It's another opportunity for us to give thanks and acknowledgement. Um, it's it's a medicine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can start to feel what I'm trying to get at here
Yeah.
about how we see it as a very healing opportunity. You're no longer this, now you're this.
Yeah.
You know, a um, young girl coming to age can be done at different age points. You know, it can be the time that she starts to change her physical attributes. She starts menstruating. It can be at that time, or it could be done at 16 years of age, or it can be at 18. There's different milestone points that every family can have their own idea. It could be every birthday. Okay,
Sure.
now you're growing older, more responsibility, more accountability. So a discussion plus some physical event, to whether it's going out for tea. Hmm.
So you had on the thumbnail for this particular YouTube, you had somebody's hand with the henna on there. It, can you talk about that? That was quite interesting.
Yeah, so in East Indian tradition, henna is a form of art of decorating the body to acknowledge a certain ceremony within their community. So typically for a wedding, women will um, get a henna art done that's visible, generally on the hands. Sometimes it's on the feet, depending on where and when everything is happening, to just acknowledge that this is an important life event. And it's a beautiful thing to experience. It's very temporary, but it's a process that people go through, and women will gather and have a henna artist come together to do everyone at the same time. So you could call that an equivalent to a bridal shower, for
Right.
instance.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So what are the physical effects of ceremony in a general term? Because we've talked about there's a lot of different types of traditions that have ceremony in, or ceremonies all on their own. Some that are personal, some that are shared. So what are You say that it's a medicine. Is it like oxytocin? Like, is it some kind of a chemical change in the brain that happens? Does it do go right through the whole body? Like, what kind of stuff could a person expect if we drill down to what's actually happening from a medicine standpoint?
From a physical
Physical,
medicine
yeah.
point, um, what can happen is when we are anticipating something coming up, our nervous system is discharging a lot of cortisol, adrenaline, many of the nervous system, as you would call it, chemicals or biopathways are on high alert because we're anticipating
Mm-hmm.
something. We're unsure, apprehensive, perhaps, or we could be dreading, or we could be feeling grief. As we acknowledge what is actually happening in the final event, if there is one, um, we then settle the nervous system because now everything is somewhat predictable.
Mm-hmm.
We are going through a process, so the nervous system will calm down, and of course, we can then have the more restful neurotransmitters start to take over. The parasympathetic nervous system is then able to engage instead of the sympathetic nervous system. So you're then allowed to arrive at a place of clarity with more calmness
Right.
and control. So that is what tends to happen. And then the person now can move forward from this new reference point.
So would that be equivalent to when somebody, a loved one passes, and they go through the grief stage, and then finally they get closure, whatever that means to them. Then that change is okay. The reference to that person, okay, they're in a better place. I've got closure now. However you want to dialogue that, or if you can dialogue it. Sometimes I don't think you can. But that's what you're talking about, is that change where okay, I've got a new reference point now. Before it was, well, why that person, and a lot of questions and anger and fear and all these different things. But the closure, when I say, hey, I got closure on that, I know for myself, I know what that feels like, it is a different reference point as you described. So that's interesting. I've never really thought of it that way, but that's really interesting.
And we can dialogue through our head about those very things you mentioned. Oh, well, they're in a better place. You're mindfully justifying. And when you go through a physical act with maybe no words at all,
Mm-hmm.
more closure can happen, whether it's um, attending a place where you last saw that person, or perhaps where they passed away, or so you're using your physical being to go to that place, to give reverence, to think about that person, address them in their spiritual form, and then say, I will, whatever it is that's important to you, that you will remember them and all the wonderful things they gave, whatever acknowledgement you need to feel, and say to that person as if they were there in ceremony. Right, light the candle, let the balloon go. You could have a fire. That's First Nations will frequently, it's like the writing of the note and then letting it burn in a fire.
Mm-hmm.
um, so water is another way to move emotion, so releasing something into a flowing river and saying, that's done.
Yeah.
um, Blowing feelings into a stone is another indigenous method of acknowledging you have the feelings. You blow those feelings into the stone, and then you release the stone.
Mm.
There's forms of helping the person go through a form of ceremony that is medicine for them, so that they can feel the completeness and the new point of reference that they now have to maintain in their lives, because it's real.
Yeah.
can't keep thinking this person is returning. You can't keep pining away about the old school. You need to move forward into the new school and meet new friends and have opportunities that were going to be important in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And do some people struggle with not the change, like hanging on to the old and not going through the change, or not going through a ceremony to better themselves? I'm assuming there are some people that just refuse to celebrate or have ceremony or however you want to describe it for that change to happen.
Yes, because they are perhaps resistant to the change that has now occurred or will be occurring. And it ties back into a discussion or perhaps a newsletter on my website about never well since. So the person's never been well since some event because they did not draw a conclusion and realize that they need to now put that behind them, or address this difficult piece, or move past the gaiety of something. I mean, eventually we all have to settle in too. It's not something that we continue partying on for days and weeks and months either.
Yeah. True.
The end of school does not mean you take a 5-year gap here.
Yeah, I get your point. Makes sense.
And maybe some people do. Like, it's entirely to them. I think under also what my observation's been, perceptional reality is also based on what the consensual reality believes. So you should be over this by now, or you should have recovered from that birth by now. Everybody has their own time and place, and having pressure from society or the shoulda, coulda, woulda types does not apply. That's when heavy medicine has to come in, and we have to delve into where did the person get stuck, and homeopathic remedy necessary to help them move out of the constitution of grief.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
It's very interesting to feel more present in our everyday lives. We have to move forward, and it's kind of like an onion too. Like sometimes one ritual may not be, or one ceremony for something may not be enough.
Right. Oh, interesting. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation. So folks, there's something I wasn't aware of, that we have, we've got, conventional medicine, we've got naturopathic medicine, all these different ways of having these medicines. And one that I just never really dawned on me was a ceremony is a form of medicine, and I just didn't dawn on me. So this has been very, very informative, Linda. Thank you so much.
Yes. And thank you, Gary, for always hosting these events and sharing your experience too, because I'm sure viewers can identify with some of your questions. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, if there's nothing else, then Linda, we'll break for this week, and we'll see you again next Saturday. And barring any technical problems we may have, but hopefully this information from today will be some sort of anchor in your life to help you to kind of look at things maybe just a little bit differently, and help you on your journey. With that being said, Linda, thank you again.